Welcome to the podcast Running Toward. This podcast tells stories of ordinary people who couldn't look away once they saw the hidden crisis in foster care and the families impacted. Our guests share heartbreak that led them to take reluctant and unexpected small, faithful steps toward the most vulnerable in their communities. Not because they had a plan, and not because they felt ready, but because they couldn't unsee their pain. You'll hear how people living normal lives discover that getting closer changed them. Their comfort mattered less, their grip on uncertainty faded, and their faith got feet in quiet, everyday ways. Ending the crisis for one or for all isn't a quick fix. It's a long, slow, often messy journey alongside one of the most overlooked and misunderstood groups in our community. Running Toward gives you a front row seat to the hidden crisis in foster care and the families impacted, and to the ordinary people who choose not to look away. Welcome back to Running Toward today. Today we're continuing our series with single moms in May. And so I'm excited to have Ciera join us today as she shares her story of fostering, how she got exposed to it at a younger age through a couple different relationships. And then in her 20s, God led her into something that you're going to hear about today, and some really exciting stories of how the Lord used her obedience and willingness and vulnerability in her community and, shattered some things in her life. So thank you, Ciera, for coming today. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
So first easy question, just what is we're here on a Saturday. What does a Saturday look like for you and your family right now?
So I am no longer single. That was my story for 3 years. So now it's usually my husband and I kind of running around with our 3 kids, doing different extracurriculars, getting the house back reset after a crazy week. And, getting some rest in there for Lucky.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. Well, good. So take me back. Let's go back in your story. You grew up and you kind of saw a couple of families that were impacted by the foster care system, that they had been involved in it. Mm-hmm. How, kind of tell me about that and kind of how did that impact you at that younger age?
Yeah, so my first memories of foster care were of some harder stories. So it was a family that my brother was friends with. This was in Arizona, and they fostered a Native American little girl, and it looked like they were heading towards adoption, and then they were able to find someone from her tribe that wanted to adopt. And with Native American children, the tribe always wins out, and so they had her for quite a bit of time, and then she left to go with that family, and so that was a harder story. I will say I was exposed to them through. I remember an assembly at my school where the daughter got an award, and they were just talking about what a great foster sister she was, and there was a lot of praise in the community, and so they were being respected for that hard, but it was really hard when they lost that little girl. And then also I went to a church where the pastor and his family were being very obedient, were very involved in the foster care system, but they also had a little girl for a couple years who ultimately was reunified with family who they didn't feel were safe. And they were very, safe reunification minded people. Right. They had former biological families whose children they had fostered that they had great relationships with, but there was a lot of grief in this reunification for them, and he was very open, and we watched him weep at the pulpit for a few weeks, which was very hard, and I think I had some of those kind of stereotypical views that as foster parents now we all cringe at now, kind of two-pronged, you signed up for this. Right. Mm-hmm. Why you knew this could happen.
You knew it was an option.
Yeah, you knew it was an option. So why is this reaction so big? But then also looking at the reaction that looks very hard. I don't think I could do that. Yeah. I don't want to do that. And so those have been viewpoints, that I've kind of come full circle on in my life. Yes, they signed up for that, but they signed up for that sacrifice. You don't get out of the pain. There's beauty in it. Obviously, it's not all hard, but that's part of what you're signing up for, and nobody gets out of those grief responses.
No, and I've seen this. This is 20 years in, just a viewpoint of it. I didn't see it earlier on, but that's all things in life. You sign up for that when you get married. You sign up for that when you have kids. You sign up for that when you pick a career. Like, everything has hard that comes with it because we live in a broken world. And I don't know what it is, because I felt the same way, but why it is we're like, well, taking on kids in foster care shouldn't fall in the category of hard. Like, that seems like an extra hard that we shouldn't have to choose. You know, I don't know why, but it is now. Like I said, 20 years deep in it, I'm like, I don't know why I've ever thought that. I ever thought that.
I think it's the feeling that if you sign up for it, you should just be able to handle it. But it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't work
quite that way.
So, having seen those two families, were you like, foster care will never be a part of my story, I'm not doing that? Or were you intrigued by it? Or how did that impact you as you headed into adulthood?
I think it made an impact, and I respected the service that they were involving themselves in. But I for a while I thought I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Not for me. And I had adoption more so on my radar, especially. So I'm a speech therapist, so especially as I started to get more involved in special education, I was really interested in special needs adoption, but I kind of had it in the back of my mind, like, I couldn't handle it if they left. Like, I want to just get involved with adoption, and foster care was kind of this scary thing that I didn't really want to touch. And but the Lord sort of, I don't know, that's what he had for me, and he broke down those barriers as time went on. So
in your 20s, you're, out of college, you're starting your career. Did you kind of have like I think we all do, maybe it was just me, but we're like, I'll get out of college, I'll find a guy, I'll get married, I'll have kids, da, 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 da. Did you have that kind of hope or plan, or like you were, hey God, this is kind of how I'm envisioning my life. Was that part of your story? And then did that change? How did that kind of evolve as maybe those things didn't play out?
Yeah, I definitely had the hope of, because I grew up in kind of a conservative evangelical family background circles, and I thought that's what would happen. I'd get married in my early 20s, have kids. I was still interested in adoption, whether I got married or not. But I think that was definitely a hope that I, get married, settle down, do all the things. But that's not how it ended up playing out. That's not what God had for me. And I did kind of have it in the back of my mind that if I hit 30 and I was still single, I might be interested in pursuing adoption single. But I thought it won't get to that point. It's not going to get to that point. And but yeah, so I always had adoption in mind. I did live life with the viewpoint, like, I really want to be married, but I'm not going to not do things, or make decisions that just because it might not fit into, or I'm not going to not do something because it might make it less likely for me to meet someone, or, and so I still lived life. I got my master's degree. I, worked, I lived abroad. I did all the things. And so I still wanted what God had for me, whether it made me more marriage marketable or not.
Yeah. And that's what I think one of the things I loved about when I was listening to your story was that piece of like, yes, I want this, but I'm not going to put everything, I'm not going to not listen to where the Lord's leading, because like you said, it led me abroad, or it led me somewhere where I'm like, this is like not the most likely scenario where I find a husband. But you weren't so stuck in that mindset that you didn't listen to where the Lord was leading. And as we'll get to, it was kind of a setup for what you didn't know was coming long term. So that's great. So as you research private adoption, did that have any impact on how you were thinking towards fostering or not fostering as you started getting into the research of that?
So I mentioned I moved abroad. I was kind of gearing up towards, I knew I was getting later into my 20s. I sort of felt like maybe I was moving more towards the path of adoption. And so I did some things, just because I wanted to feel like I'd live my life. I didn't want to, move into a path like adoption or foster care and feel like I'd been, I hadn't gone out and lived my life, but been limited.
Right.
And so I had those experiences, realized I was ready to put down roots. I came to Texas, where my family was kind of settling at the time. And I just sort of hit stability quicker than I was expecting. Bought a house, found a really good church. My family was here. And I feel like that's the closest I've ever come to hearing like the voice of God. He's like, I had the age 30 in my mind. I think I was 26 or 27 when I sort of reached that point. And I remember driving to work one day and it felt like God was just telling me, like, you're ready now. I've given you everything you need. You're ready now. And it wasn't like foster care, that wasn't the seed initially. But because of my experience in special education, I really had Down syndrome adoption in my mind. And so that's what I first started looking into, started asking questions of some agencies. And they told me, you're a good candidate, but you'd probably still wait at least a year to get matched. That's pretty normal. And so it just sort of hit me. If I'm waiting a year, who am I really serving? I'm sure there's children in need tomorrow. So why would I be waiting a year for something that just feels more comfortable for me? And as I was looking at all the adoption routes, foster care is kind of included in all those searches. And for a while I was like, no, not that one.
Everything
not that one.
I
I can't do it. I don't want to do that one. But it was just that conviction, like these are the kids who need somebody now. And I did feel a little bit of extra responsibility because I was doing it single. I'm a big believer in that we can serve children single, and that's not a wrong decision to do it that way, but it is the extra consideration. I don't have a second parent. And it is harder, and there's more of a need to rally community and fill in some of those gaps. And so I just really want to make sure it's not me that I'm serving. I'm really doing it to serve that child. And so I want to go where the biggest need is. And then also just practical things financially as a single person.
Yeah.
Foster care is definitely a lot more financially feasible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you made that shift of like, okay, no, not private adoption, foster care seems to be the path. I want to be able to serve pretty quickly. How did you rally? How did you have those conversations? Did you talk to, you said your family was here. Did you talk to them? You talked to church community? Like, did you say, hey, I'm feeling like I'm led to do this, but I know, even a married couple needs help fostering, much less somebody that's single. So
yeah, my parents were the biggest players that I knew I would need their support to be able to do it well. And so that was kind of the first scary conversation that I had, was, hey, I think I'm supposed to do this. And, that's not what you imagine for your child. And so there was a little bit of hesitation at first, and, kind of, are you sure you don't want to wait longer, see if you get married? And they both grew up with single moms. And so at various points in their childhood. And so they knew how hard that was going to be. And I think they just, they wanted the best for me. And so there was some hesitation. But after a little bit, I remember my mom mentioned that my dad had told her, like, maybe that's why we are where we are right now is to help her do this. And so they, I was very blessed with their support. It took a minute, but and it was still an adjustment once I got in, just figuring out together what it was. You don't know how intense it's going to be until you're in it. And I don't know if
God's grace.
Yeah. I don't know if they really knew what they were signing up for either.
Nobody does.
So we had to figure it out together. And then I was still kind of new in my church. Like, I had a great small group, and a good community. I don't think I knew at the time how much it was going to deepen some of those relationships and how much in the reads I was going to get with some of these people. So at that time, it wasn't like, hey, what do you guys think? It was just kind of like, I'm doing this.
Yeah,
I'm here, So it wasn't so much like seeking their approval, but starting to share with people, and yeah, it just it all it got much deeper and much more fleshed out as time went on, and I was in it. But it was definitely very vulnerable to tell people, like,
Sure.
because it was a long drawn out decision for me, and so to start telling people like I'm gonna do it, it's like you worry about opinions a little bit, but I mostly started sharing when I was like, no, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like this is what God has for
So
me.
were there naysayers? Were there people who were like, not, yay, go do this, and we're like, what are you doing?
A little bit. Like I said, I don't think I was quite close enough with people for them to really come up to me and like, are you crazy? Like, what are you thinking? So they're kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
But I did have the occasional person like, what are you going to do with them during the day? And just it is, it's a fairly conservative evangelical church, which I love my church. It's wonderful, but a lot of stay-at-home moms, a lot of very traditional Christian families, and some, but not a lot of working mothers.
Right.
And so I think
You're busting the mold on a lot of levels.
busting the mold, yeah. So just occasionally someone would comment on, well, you're not a two-parent home, or like, daycare, really?
Yeah.
Is that really in their best interest? And things like that you just had to kind of let roll off. And when you're in it and you see where these kids are coming from and how much need there is, it's like
none of those things matter.
None of those things matter. Daycare's great. They're gonna be okay. Like, and there's a gap in my home that I don't have a second parent, but God is bigger than that gap, and He can fill it. And He can give us what we need. And the most important thing is that I can provide access to a community that loves Jesus and teach them about the Lord, and it's safe. And I think those are the big things.
Yeah.
And fortunate to have male family members too who were willing to invest and be that safe male presence, which was important for some of the kids I had.
For sure.
Yeah.
So as you went into fostering, you said you had kind of had come in thinking, oh, I'll kind of adopt. So that that's a different mentality going into taking in kids than fostering. So was there anything that kind of reframed your mindset as you went into fostering from that foster to adopt kind of that some people go into to like, no, I'm just going in to serve the kids that need to be served?
Yeah, like I said, it was important to me, especially because I was doing it single, that I was doing everything for the right reason. And so that was a big growth process to do kind of the theological deep dive of what is foster care. So starting to listen to some of the voices who are really strong in the gospel-centered foster care space, and really flesh out a Christ-filled view of biological families, and learning about how foster care is a biological family ministry, and safe reunification is the goal. And yes, that is at our cost sometimes, but that's really what is the best for these kids if it's possible. And you're not just there to, quote unquote, save a child. You're really there to serve the family and be the hands and feet of Jesus. And so just a lot of, conversations with other people, reading books, reading scripture, and just having to, like I said, just make sure I'm doing it for the right reasons, and make sure my theology was really fleshed out before I went in, so that I understood why I was there and who I was serving.
Yeah, that's incredible. I wish more people would do that. That was good. So as you get into fostering, rainbows and unicorns, hard stories, did it impact, you kind of alluded to the fact that it was a bigger cost than you could even have imagined. What were some of those things in the first few placements or years? I don't know how it all plays out timeline wise, that kind of, you were like, whoa, like was not expecting this?
Yeah. Secondary trauma was something that I kind of underestimated. You know, you hear about it in the trainings, but it's hard to understand until you're there and you're walking it. And
So explain that for people that maybe don't know what that means.
so that's the idea that when you're around someone who has been primarily traumatized, has been directly traumatized by really hard things in their life and is in more of that survival mode, and you're the one taking care of them and being that safe person for them, it's that idea that your body starts to kind of take on that survival mode and some of those experiences they've gone through as if it had happened to you as well. When you're just kind of continually around that. And that was something I was watching both my daughter go through and her family go through, and just, I think, I'd had a really just kind of sheltered, easy life. And so being in this situation now with people who are going through really hard things that were life and death, like I will say, like, I'm a very sensitive person, and like my body was not used to that. And I didn't fully realize what was happening. I just knew I was kind of just wired all the time,
Yeah.
And it took a while to kind of understand it and understand what I needed to get through it. I had wonderful friends and people who did rally around me and were trying to help me the best that they could. But I think I wish I'd realized a little sooner, like, it's okay to get some professional help.
Seriously.
Like,
Yes.
this is really, really hard. And, church was great. Friends were great. I think biblical counseling sometimes can look at first, like, where are you sinning? What sin do you need to fix? And I was like, I will fix anything, but I just, when your body doesn't feel safe, it's hard to even get there. It's
hard to see your own stuff. Like when you're just in that survival mode, it's just like, okay, what's the Tuesday? What's Wednesday? Like you don't get time to even like.
Trying to get through the next moment and parent on your own. You're everything's about her needs and just trying to meet everyone's needs, but just having to come to the place, like, if I don't meet my needs, I can't meet her needs. And
for sure.
And having to realize, like, yes, there is, I am a sinful creature. There are sins I need to address, but I am coming into this with a fallen kingdom body and fallen kingdom realities, and it's okay to need a little bit of physical help to level out. And then it's like, okay, here is what I'm doing wrong, and I can correct that.
Yeah.
But getting the medical and professional counseling help first to be able to get to that place and level everything out. And just being, having spaces to talk through some of those very traumatic things that you're suddenly kind of thrust into, and how to mentally deal with those things, especially that, when they're happening to this baby toddler who's been placed,
want to protect,
and placed in your lap, and your mom, and you've got the state telling you, like, do this with her, drop her here, put her through this, and your body's telling you no, that's not good for her.
But you don't get any control.
But you don't get any say.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something I wish I would have known sooner. Is like, it's okay to go get some professional help. These are
absolutely.
These are big realities that I was walking through. But that was a blessing to walk through in the end, because the people who were the most helpful to me were people who had not been through foster care, but had been through their own journeys kind of with mental health and things like that, who could tell me, like, you're not crazy. Like, you just need a little bit of help. And even people I walked through that season with since then, who have since gone through something, who are like, I get it now. Like, I understand. And I'm really glad that I get it now, because, once you've gone through it, then you're more equipped to to look at other people and say, like,
For sure.
it's going to be okay. You're not crazy.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things where you, like, you could get by. Like you said, you had a bit of a sheltered life. And so your rhythms, your habits, whatever, they were fine for that season.
Right.
But then you were in a new season and you had to get help to figure out, okay, how do I keep the peace? How do I function in this new season, which has all of these new challenges and weights and struggles and conflicting things of, like, I love this person and I know she's supposed to go back, but this doesn't feel like all the things that are foster care. That I agree. Like, that's just it. Those spiritual disciplines have to go to a next level on a lot of levels, and also that's why God gave great counselors great gifts in counseling, because they need to be utilized. So as you get your feet wet and you're fostering, and you had said, you wanted to go in with the right heart of serving, and kind of had pivoted mindsets from that adoption mindset to serving mindset. And then you get your daughter and you meet bio mom, and that kind of shifts some things for you. Can you talk a little bit about that relationship with her bio mom and what you kind of learned from that?
Yeah. So I went in, doing all the things, leaving notes in her diaper bag and photos, and trying to build that relationship with mom. The very first interaction I had with her, nobody told me that maybe it's not the best idea to walk right into the Department of Family and Protective Services building and hand off directly to mom for the visit. Like, nobody told me.
They don't. No.
Yeah. No. Nobody told me, like, maybe just drop in the back and have the worker come get her. So I walked right in, and mom was there. And it was actually after the visit, and she didn't look at me, didn't talk to me, just shoved the diaper bag in my face and walked off. And I tried after that. They told me just drop off next time, and I tried leaving notes. Nothing was ever touched, nothing was ever taken. And my agency was kind of like, you tried? And I'm like, that doesn't feel right to me. And especially because we were having really hard transitions. My daughter would just scream bloody murder when the worker took her from me. Yeah. And that was getting exhausting. And so I just asked my CPS worker, I'm like, hey, could you please tell mom, I'm not here to steal her baby. Right. I want to work with her. It'd be great if we could have smoother handoffs. And mom had a pretty negative experience with the foster family before me, who treated her like the villain. Yeah. And so that was her experience prior to me, because I was my daughter's second foster parent or foster family. And so I had a wonderful first CPS worker who, really did care about all the dynamics and was willing to go to mom and say, would you be willing to meet her and talk to her? And she really wants to support you. And once mom, and I know it wouldn't be this way in, every single situation, but once mom heard that, she was fine. She was like, it was like just any other human being, was friendly, was willing to talk to me, was very kind. And I proceeded with caution. We just have these very brief interactions at visits. But then eventually I got a Google Voice number, and we started texting, and it ended up being very therapeutic for us both. I think it was about 7 months into the case that we started texting regularly. And when you're a single parent, you have friends who care, but they don't want to see every single picture you take and every single thing that happens. And I started sending mom some pictures, and I'm like, sorry, it's kind of a lot. She's like, no, send me everything you have. And I'm like, okay, great. So it kind of became this co-parenting relationship, where I could share the things that were happening daily, and she wanted as much as she could possibly get. And it's a relationship. I think so far in my life, it's been one of the premier privileges I've had, because it just doesn't make sense without God. She's a refugee from Africa. She's been through so much in her life. There's a lot of racial, cultural lines between us, very different experiences. There's no reason why we should be friends.
Other than a shared love for a little girl.
Yeah. And we've just been through so much together at this point that I almost just how much she trusts me. I almost feel like I don't deserve it. It's just so implicit at this point. And she's had to be very, very humble through some very hard things, you know. So I just, you know, and we've come to a place where our daughter is safer with me, but she knows that, and having to, you know, walk through that with her, it's been a long journey, but, you know, we still talk all the time. And we did walk through a reunification together. And that was, I, you know, championed her, built her up as much as I could. And it was, you know, one of the more difficult, painful things I've ever been through to drop her off at that house. But had the huge privilege of still being able to walk with them once my daughter reunified. And I think my agency said they've never, I know it happens, you know, in other cases, but my agency said they hadn't had a case like that before. Yeah. Where a foster parent had been able to maintain that kind of contact. And I remember it was maybe a week or two after my daughter reunified, and Mom called me, and she told our daughter, she's like, say hi to Mommy. And it was just, you know, that just like melted me that she would, you know, pay me that
honor
respect.
that. You know, kids can never have too many people loving them. That's the thing. Yeah. So walk through unification, but obviously she's back with you now. So how did that transition between you and Mom and the relationship there? You know, that's one of the things, back up a little bit, is that in foster care, I think so many unique things, but that we get close to a lot of the people that we would normally just judge. Because you could, you know, hear their story and you write your own narrative and decide why they are the bad person or the villain. And then you get close to them and then you hear their stories and then you're like, oh, but for the grace of God, is that not me sitting across, you know, an office while somebody else is walking in with my child? So I love the fact that you were just bold enough and courageous enough and kept pursuing and persevering to to get close to Mom, to let her see that not all people are like the experience you had before. And there is a way that we can both love this little girl and do what's best for her and lay down, you know, our own wants and needs. And so how did that play out in reunification and then obviously re-removal as she came back?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just so much credit to her, because I have had other experiences with biological family members that just wouldn't have played out this way. There is a very strong humility to her, and she does struggle, but she's always, you know, she does actually love God, and she's always you know, fighting to get back there, but has just been through some genuinely hard things in her life. So I respected, you know, I tried to give her space once she reunified. I'd check in every once in a while, but there would be, you know, a month or two here and there where I wouldn't hear from them. I think we got together once or twice, and it did seem like things were going positively, and you know, I'd just continue to give space, but a little ways in I started seeing signs that things weren't going very well. I started to see the beginning of the end, and there was one time where older sister called me and kind of told me her mom wasn't well, and so you know, my parents and I went to the house. My parents stayed with the girls. I took Mom to the hospital, brought her back, and could see, you know, house wasn't in a very good state. Around Christmas, I dropped off jackets for them, and that was where, you know, Mom started telling me how much she was really struggling. And I'm blessed with a really good agency who I could call at any point, and, you know, kind of got on the phone with them and was able to talk through things and tell them, like, I don't think she's safe. Like, I don't think I can leave the girls here. And, you know, they were able to kind of talk through things with me and give legal advice and, like, why I could not leave the house with the girls in that moment. But, like, you need to call. Like, you need to tell mom she needs to get XYZ help or you have to call. Right. And so I did have to walk back into the house. Like, I need you to do this, get this support, or I'm going to have to call the police and I'm going to have to call CPS. And she, she looked me in the eye and she's like, I'm trying so hard not to hurt you right now. But she didn't. And we had that level of trust. Like anyone else, she would have lost her mind on.
Right.
But
you had built that relationship with her.
I had built the trust. We had the equity, and when you have that bond over a child, and she saw how loved her child was, and that's what. And I think just treating her as a human, not coming to her with judgment and just kind of giving support, no strings attached. I think that's what built that trust. And so I did have to walk out of the house and call, and that wasn't even an immediate removal. It was still a journey after that I walked through with the family. And I walked out of the house thinking, if CPS doesn't remove right now, like my relationship with her is done. I'm never going to see my daughter again. But I think she just had so few support people, that she was willing to keep coming back. And she has that level of humility that she doesn't hold it against me. And yeah.
That's incredible. So now you're further down the line, years into this, and what have you learned in this story over the genesis of the whole story and kind of where you guys are at now and seeing it kind of full circle? Well, not completely full circle, but getting there. What have you learned about yourself, about the relationships that the Lord calls us into, about community? Like, what is all of this season? Because you're still so young. Like, that has taught you a lifetime of things in relationships, your relationship with the Lord, like so many things. What are the big nuggets you've taken away?
I think it's just, the Lord knew weak points that he knew weak points that I had that needed to be worked through. I think it's taught me how to just walk through some really hard things and know that the Lord's always going to be there, and I can trust him, and I may not be able to see how it works out, but because I let her go. I reunified her, and I thought that was the end, and it wasn't. I had moments where I thought, mom's going to be done with me. I'm never going to see them again, and that wasn't the end. I had moments where I thought I'm going to be single my whole life, and that wasn't the end. And so I think just how to really trust God and know that even if I can't see the end of the story, like it's always going to be better than the ending I would have written. It's taught me how to walk through those really hard things with other people. I think just because of where some of the places I had lived previously, like Tucson, Arizona, London, England, they don't have big faith communities there. And so I had learned how to do a lot of solitary faith and walk with the Lord on my own, but I didn't have access to a lot of big Christian communities. And so having to learn how to be vulnerable and walk through really hard things within a church community, that was a big learning curve. And, I feel better equipped now to know how to serve people when they are going through hard things, both because I've walked through people going through infinitely harder things than I've been through, but also because of those experiences have now gone through harder things myself.
Right.
And you just, once you know what coming to the end of yourself feels like. It's so much easier to approach others with humility and love.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So, how I know for me that I definitely I grew up in the church, had a faith, but it was relatively shallow, especially college, young adult. And then as we started fostering, there was a whole, almost like a veil that got pulled off of, oh, this is what you mean when you talk about walking and suffering and sacrificing. And again, not even close to probably even what the bio mom you have has been through. But on an American scale, was there that moment when you were like, oh, they're missing it. Like, this American Christianity is actually missing the full picture of walking with the Lord into hard things and doing hard things, because our culture tells them, and largely sometimes the church, keep your bubble, make it comfortable, be, have all these healthy boundaries that keep you from hard things. But ultimately, it keeps you from really seeing a refugee struggling and building a relationship and humbly co-parenting in a situation that she never wanted her life to end up in, or, from even the other kids and the kids we served. It really keeps you from that. How do you see that now, in your relationship within your church, and maybe even some people that were like, what are you doing? That they're kind of on a lot of levels missing out.
Yeah.
And not that everybody should foster to
No.
find that, but we're all called to do hard things. Like, that's, you don't get out of that piece of it.
Yeah, for sure. And I have to remember to be humble and know that, only the Lord knows what he's teaching everyone at a given moment. And so can't come crashing down on everyone around me with judgment. And also, I'm a big believer we're saved by grace, but not by work. So it's not like, we should go, we must do all these things to
Absolutely
earn our
not.
way. But, that grace should compel us to go be the hands and feet of Jesus. And the hands and feet of Jesus have holes from nails. And, faith it's supposed to be costly. Because we gain all this love and infinite riches from the Lord. Like, it's supposed to compel us to go and share that with others. And, and not everyone within the church has lived this sheltered life. But I think if we have been given the privilege of a solid foundation from which we're able to serve, and we have those resources and that energy, then those are the talents, the resources the Lord is trusting us with to go and spend on others, to invest them wisely with others, to serve them. And I think it's scary, it hurts sometimes, it costs everything, but then you just reap so much reward in that, just the richness you get that you can't get in your safe little bubble. Like, I don't think I fully understood real faith or real trust in the Lord, or really had fully lived all the scriptures of lament and what it looks like to walk through some of the valley of the shadow of death. Like, I didn't experience anything close to that. I didn't know what that meant before walking through some of these, both other people's very, very hard spaces and some of my own hard spaces. And that, it just brought so much scripture to life for me. And even when I did biblical counseling previously, they're like, what are some other times you've walked through the valleys and the Lord brought you out of it? And it's like, what valleys? I don't even have any framework. And now it's like, okay, there was that valley and the Lord brought me out, and there was that valley and the Lord brought me out. And so I think it's it is our responsibility. It's what we're called to. If you read the Gospels, Jesus, he calls us to very, very hard things for the benefit of other people, but then there's also so much richness and reward that we gain from it ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything, I guess, in closing,
like, talk to the young 20-year-old who maybe got sent this podcast by a friend or a coworker or something. That is like, this is you in your early 20s where you're like, I don't know. What helped you the most as you were walking through that and making decisions, and what would you maybe wish somebody would have said to you in those early years?
Yeah, I think, if this is something you feel like you're called to, be wise. It's wise to make sure you're going to have some support people and have some stability underneath you, but also don't be afraid. Don't listen to the people who might be trying to tell you it's sinful because you're a single parent home. Like, there's so much need in the world. We're not doing work in Eden. We're doing fallen kingdom work, and so those gaps that we have, the Lord is going to fill. And I would also say, don't, if there are things that you want, if you want marriage, like, don't be scared. Like, the Lord is going to accomplish in your story what he intends to accomplish in your story. It will come to pass. Like, the Lord, there's nothing that is too hard for the Lord. And, if God had more for me to learn single right now, then I'd still be single. But, I had a friend who was joking at my wedding, like, the only way Ciera was going to end up married before I did was if God put, like, the exact right man just right in front of her path, because she doesn't go anywhere.
She wasn't looking for it.
she never goes out. And so, it was the exact right person for me who was put in my path, and I wouldn't have been ready for him unless I had been fostering, and the way our stories just work together perfectly. So I think, just live the life that God is calling you to, and nothing is too hard for him, and he's going to use the things that you might feel like are most limiting, just ultimately for your good and the people around you. You don't have to live a story that culture thinks is neat and tidy and is most likely to work out for you. Like, God works best in the fringes and the things that break the mold, and you just, you can't imagine what it's going to do for your faith and the people that you'll meet, and it will be very, very hard, but
and may require counseling.
Yes.
But also
I would recommend professional counseling.
But also,
but yeah, you can't imagine the fruit and the reward and just the richness that it adds to your life.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing so much. I really appreciate it, Ciera. And if you guys have enjoyed this episode of Running Toward, and maybe you have a friend who's single and considering this, or maybe you know a single friend that's doing this, like, man, send them this podcast, send them this month of podcast, let them be encouraged by it. And also just find a way to serve them. Take them a meal, take them coffee, just go hang out and fold laundry. Do something to serve those who are serving kiddos in our community. And we will see you next week.